Yo, what's up? This is Jay Dennis, and we're back with Talking NuMetal. A video I haven't done in a while, but something big is bringing me back. And it's also making me bring that beat back with John Otto, drummer of LIMP BIZKIT, who just released a new album. And yeah, that album is still sucks. And having recently done a ranked and reviewed of LIMP BIZKIT's 5 main studio albums, and then I even did a video ranking around 100 of their songs, both studio releases and unreleased stuff and B-sides and what have you. So be sure to check those out. But today I just want to talk about their new release, which as of today has been out for just over a week, so I've had some time to marinate on it. But frankly, it didn't take a whole lot of time to marinate on it, which is one of the very, very few, I don't know about critique, but just not a favorite thing about this album. It's 31 minutes and 55 seconds. It's, just barely 32 minutes long, which compared to all their other albums, is pretty short. But I'm going to kind of go over, I'm going to touch on all 12 songs, each one just a little bit, and kind of go over the album structure, what I love, what I was excited to hear again, and again, my main critique is just it's a really short album. But I've been speculating even before Wes Borland said anything. But when they put out Dad Vibes, I immediately said they were going to be putting out an album, and then wouldn't you know it, a few weeks later, they're teasing it and it's coming out. And now my prediction right out the gate was, okay, this is only a 32-minute album. And I know that when bands write songs in the studio, some of them just don't make the album. But it seemed like kind of a low ratio that LIMP BIZKIT would write, I guess, over 30 songs, but only release 12. So I said, this is the appetizer. This album is incredible, but it's an appetizer. I have a feeling something even bigger is going to come. I don't know what the timeline looks like, but there could be a new wave of LIMP BIZKIT coming. And then Wes Borland, a few days later, took a picture of like some food he was eating, and I don't know if it was like a reference to the Snacky Poo pseudo interview at the end of the song, where Wes Borland is just beautifully and like callously responding to the interviewer. Responding to this reporter, Wes Borland, you're a legend. It was great talking with you. Love from Blockers. Yeah. Oh God, this album checked off so many boxes, but I kind of want to go through all the tracks real quick, and also 12 tracks. What's the breakdown of it? How does 12 tracks flesh out to 32 minutes? But before I get into that, let me just say I do love the album. I'm a huge LIMP BIZKIT fan. They're my favorite band, and even albums that I weren't particularly their most popular, like Results May Vary. Even people talk shit about Gold Cobra for some reason. I love all their albums. They're my favorite band. And Still Sucks definitely delivered. So let's get into it. Let's talk about why it's awesome, and let's talk about how it's different, but it is vintage LIMP BIZKIT. They are unabashedly themselves, and they show it, and they come out the gate with Out of Style, where even though it's brief, it basically is a traditional LIMP BIZKIT intro where you got like Fred Durst talking like, we can't change the past, but we can something the future. Look how prepared I am. It's similar to like fucking the intro to $3 Bill Y'all. It's like, it's instead of like a minute and a half intro, it's only like 10 seconds, but like it kicks off with Wes Borland, incredible guitar riffing. Like the guitar riffs on this album are insanely good. Like Out of Style, we should be on the same team, which kind of reminds me of like, Results May Vary alternative rock sounds, but you got, instead of John Smith or whatever the guy's name was, you got Wes Borland playing on the guitar for this album. So Out of Style comes out hard with some Gold Cobra whammy sounding guitar riffs. It gets even nastier with Dirty Rotten Biscuit, which is definitely the hardest hitting song on the album. Great NuMetal riffs. The verse the guitar live from listen to Snacky Poo if you want to know what I'm referencing there. He like strokes out at the end of his sentence. The verse has the absolute best guitar riff on the album, in my opinion, with Fred Durst delivering absolutely on the vocals. I forgot to mention too, Out of Style. You should check your bounce game. Something from the mountain. Like he's doing the fucking chipmunk voice from like Significant Other and Chocolate Starfish. So he's giving the fans new and old, and somehow bringing sounds from almost all of Limp Bizkit's discography into this album. You might be wondering, well, where's the $3 bill y'all sound? I'll tell you where it's at. It's in Barnacle. It's in You Bring Out the Worst in Me. It's in Pill Popper, where the screams sound pretty fucking raw, and with the what sounds like the what's it called, the telephone effect, where it sounds like you're screaming through like a walkie-talkie or something. It sounds pretty raw. It sounds like some of the heavier material you hear on this album is very $3 bill y'all reminiscent. But 12 songs on this album, I'd say maybe 6 of them are like kind of full length. You got Out of Style, Dirty Rotten Biscuit, You Bring Out the Worst in Me, Love the Hate, Pill Popper, and Goodbye. The other tracks that are shorter and more like transition songs are just, barely 2 or 2.5 minutes as Dad Vibes, Churn It Up Bitch, I suppose, Barnacle, and Snacky Poo, where those are shorter songs, kind of more like your traditional transition tracks from like a rap album. Dad Vibes is technically a full song, but it's a shorter song. And then Out of Nowhere, which is kind of reminiscent of Results May Vary, you got 2 acoustic tracks. You have an NXS cover, which is great, by the way. The original song from them, Don't Change, is a great song. I'm surprised Limp Bizkit went the acoustic route with this one. They didn't go Faith direction with this cover, but it sounds pretty solid. And then Empty Hole, which is probably the superior song, but pretty solid acoustic tracks. When you're listening to a Limp Bizkit track or album, you don't expect to hear 2 random songs start with a acoustic guitar strum. So 32-minute album, it might sound a little disjointed at first, but a lot of fans are saying that they didn't overstay their welcome. They are maintaining their identity and doing what they want to do, and kind of proving that they weren't just a flash in the pan during the turn of the century, that whether or not you claim that they're a guilty pleasure or not, they're going to do what they're going to do. And like I said, Limp Bizkit is my absolute favorite band, and it's not even a guilty pleasure. I feel no guilt in loving the vocal performance and personality of Fred Durst. As a guitar player, I crank it to how fucking well and how creative Wes Borland is, and his riffs are insanely good. And of course, his means of using the whammy pedal and guitar effects are unparalleled. Whammy pedal, whammy bar, rather. And then the rhythm section, John Otto and Sam Rivers, of course, sound as incredible as always. You got some nice old school Limp Bizkit sounds and songs like Turn It Up Bitch, where you got that bass line. You got great drumming right out the gate with Out of Style, even harder with Dirty Rotten Biscuit. But just the overall sound of the album with Dad Vibes, where they're using more modern recording techniques, but you can still tell that it's got some old school sounds and influence going through it. If we're talking about just purely new and maybe unique to this album, I would say some of the breakdown sounding songs like You Bring Out the Worst in Me, that's probably my favorite track on the album aside from Dirty Rotten Biscuit and Goodbye, is the main drop B riff in that song, You Bring Out the Worst in Me. It sounds like a fucking breakdown, so John Otto's drumming sounds different there, and it sounds great. Love the Hate is a great diss track, basically a self-diss track, and very reminiscent of what they would have done back then. Barnacle's got a fucking almost slam hardcore sound going to it. Pill Popper, again, more hardcore sounds going to it, and some actual lyrical meaning behind the pharmaceutical industry. Snacky Poo, much like Turn It Up Bitch, is mostly just a little rap track with a lot of DJ Lethal, who fucking killed it on this album. And thank God they announced DJ Lethal right out the gate. And then, of course, that phone call to end Snacky Poo was very Limp Bizkit. Just the horrible interview when Wes Borland just not giving a shit. Like, I love it. It's such a funny song and such a funny interview. But honestly, as much as I've talked about Dirty Rotten Biscuit and You Bring Out the Worst in Me, which are probably the best tracks on the album, and of course Dad Vibes is a solid single too, but to me that's more of a transition track, honestly. The best track on the album is probably Goodbye, the closing track, which is Limp Bizkit trying to go boy band. It is very well written. It sounds like a turn-of-the-century R&B boy band, somewhat upbeat ballad. Fred Durst singing sounds great on this album, on this song. The guitar work sounds great. The effects, the beats and everything. So all in all, Limp Bizkit checked off a bunch of boxes with this album. Again, like I said at the top, my only critique really is that it's too short. But like I said, I think that this is just an appetizer. I think there's more to come. And I think if you're a hardcore Limp Bizkit fan, you're still extremely happy that they put out a fucking album after all this time and you're excited. Like, Limp Bizkit's legacy before this album came out was already set in stone. One of the greatest bands of all time, one of the biggest bands in the world, and the fucking, like, godfathers, one of the godfathers of a metal movement that might seem like a flash in the pan, but to all of us millennials that are extremely nostalgic for stuff like that, it's huge. And guilty pleasure aside, you cannot fuck with how powerful this band is, how powerful, how great of a marketer, how great of a personality, and how great of a just entertainer that Fred Durst is. And the musicians he has behind him. I mean, Fred Durst is a fucking great vocalist too. I mean, I don't care if you want to shit on his clean vocals, but the guy can fucking scream. He can rap pretty damn well too. But like, who gives a shit? Sounds awesome. The music is fun. And I think this album will fit in with their discography really well. I would give this album at this time, after a few listens, it definitely grew on me after a few listens. And to this day, listening to it about maybe like 15 times now, just over a week into it. Just like all their other albums, I'd probably deem it at least somewhat excellent, which means it probably gets at least a 9 out of 10. Like, Limp Bizkit can't really do any wrong by me. Unless it was like their Smelly Beaver album, which is all B-sides, I'd probably give that album barely like a 7.5 out of 10, because they're all a bunch of B-sides with some really bad tracks and they don't feature Wes Borland. But all their other studio albums I love. I love Results May Vary. I love Gold Cobra. And of course, their first 3 albums are fucking iconic. So Still Sucks sits comfortably with the rest of their albums. Welcome to the club. I'm excited to see what else they have to bring. But heck, even if this was the last thing they released for a while, I'd be very happy with it. And I'm just so fucking grateful that they gave us new music. Thank you, Freddie D, Wes Borland, John Otto, Sam Rivers, DJ Lethal, John Otto, take it to the Matthews Bridge. Yeah!